Okay. So now let's collide two ideas here. We're talking about SMART goals, and we talked about being passionate and doing something that you're passionate about. So does a passion element fit into the SMART framework, or can we add that to that? Because we can measure goals and we can set timeframes and do all that sort of stuff. What helps us along the way to continue and follow through with that goal beyond the sort of honeymoon phase that, I'm really passionate and enjoy this and that. But, what's sustaining? Maybe SMARTs, as in S at the end, would be sustaining.
Yeah, the problem with passion and goals is passion's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So the positive side of passion is that you have to have passion to sustain yourself through the process that's required to achieve the goal. So if I don't see people with passion when they describe their goal, I usually know that they haven't got a high probability of achieving the goal. So often when people say, look, this is my goal, my first question is, how passionate are you about this?
Yeah.
And I want to not hear the words, I want to feel and see the tears in the eyes and that sort of thing. So that's the positive side. There's an interesting negative side about passion, and that is that it can often interfere with the R in SMART, which is the realistic. Is this realistic?
Yeah.
And so you might have a person, and this is a real life case. Person came to me and they loved opera singing, absolutely loved it with a passion, and that's where they wanted their career to be, and they were determined that was their career. But the problem is in opera singing, there's very few people in the world that make money as operatic singers. And so what was happening is their passion was getting in the road of their understanding of realism. That they were not going to ever be in that top 3 or 4. And so the discussion I had with them is that we need to, let's not be negative Nellies, but we need to be a bit realistic about this. And the chances of you being in the top few percent of operating singers is very low. So what we need to do is perhaps build another goal that supports you to pursue your passion of operating singing without your operating singing necessarily being your sole goal or your income goal. So, yeah, that's the negative side.
Okay.
Just because you're passionate doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I think a lot of bad advice is given to young people that says, find your passion and that's your career. My thing is, no, find your passion and then work out, is it going to be a career or is it just going to be something your career is going to support? Okay,
that's a very good point. And something I might add in terms of, at least for myself, I feel that I have a lot of different passions, and sometimes my passions change by the month. So I think that's something that a lot of young professionals grapple with, is we have a lot of different passions, and sometimes those are changing all the time. So, do you have any advice in that realm?
Yes. Well, the first thing is that I think it's good if you've got passions that are changing, because to me, you're building a knowledge base and you're building diversity in your own person. And that will ultimately help you finally.
Agree.
That diversity doesn't worry me. But eventually when you actually discover a goal that you really want to pursue, then the diversity actually starts working against you. You've got to actually now completely focus on the goal. And the stronger that focus is on one thing, the better. And the night I met you, I spoke of a book called The One Thing, which was it was a book written by some people that had gone to the film and watched City Slickers. And City Slickers is a bit of a comedy western.
Yeah.
And anyway, the City Slickers asked Jack Vallance, what's this one magic thing in life? And he said it's one thing. And I can't remember what happened to him, but he never actually got to tell them what the one thing was. And these guys went out and wrote a book on it, and they said what he was about to say was the one thing is focus on the one thing.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, I agree. And focus is key as well. Yeah. You have to be focused in any endeavour, I suppose, if you want to be successful.
Well, the thing is, there's trade-offs all the time. So if you came to me and said, I want to be an AFL footballer, well, to be a good AFL footballer, there's trade-offs, because you're not going to be able to do as much drinking as you did before. You're not going to be able to do the partying and theoretically all these other things. And so the more focused you are, the better. And in fact, I took it to the extreme. I realised how important this was. And when I, for example, did my world records, for the last 3 months prior to the record attempts, I lived like a monk. I just trained, I slept, and I ate. Yeah. I didn't socialise, I didn't do anything. Now, people would say that's extreme. But I was interested, if you took it to the extreme, what would happen? And if you take it to the extreme, you break world records. That's what happens.
Something that you touched on in terms of building diversity in our character, in our experiences, I think it's a very relevant topic. And a question that was asked to me not too long ago was, do you think diversity drives creativity and innovation, or innovation drives diversity, or both? And there's some sort of feedback.
No, the research that has been done is that showing that innovation and creativity, and sorry, when I use the word creativity, I'm using it in an academic sense, which basically means to come up with a new and useful idea. Like, there's a very specific definition of creativity. It's not coming up with an art piece or whatever. It's coming up with a new and useful idea, so it has practical application. What we're finding is the greater the diversity of input that goes into creating that idea, the stronger that idea will be, the higher it will be in terms of usefulness and application. So and newness. So you're talking about young people, and all I'm thinking is if they're playing around with lots of ideas, they're just doing an apprenticeship and they're building a base, and I see that as a positive thing. Whereas I think as parents sometimes we pull children aside and we go, right, now I want you to focus on something. I want you to become an engineer. I wouldn't really worry now if somebody went and studied engineering and then did medicine. And in actual fact, interesting enough, to do medicine now, you've got to go off and do another degree.
Yeah,
you don't get straight into medicine anymore.
That's correct. Yeah.
And also and perhaps the cycle swung a little bit, because in Australia, when people went into professions, they feel as if they need to study that profession to go into that profession. So if you wanted to be an accountant, you need to do an accounting course. Interesting enough, in the UK, particularly in the merchant banking, the merchant banks used to look for people that had actually gone off and done something completely different. And certainly when I was doing mergers and acquisitions in the UK, I'd often run across very, very good merchant bankers whose degree was honours in history, medieval history, or something like that, and that was seen as value in the UK, because people were seeing as building a diversity of base before you actually get into your career. Whereas over here, we sort of think we've got to go off and do a Bachelor of Business if we're going to be.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that just the differences in the countries.
I agree, and it's something personally that I can attest to. I started off as an engineer, then I became a management consultant. After management consulting, I found a passion for technology, and it was they definitely don't teach business technology at university, so it's something that I had to really just dive into and learn as I go as well.
But also in your career, you wouldn't be able to do half of the things that you're doing at the moment if you hadn't had that diversity of background, because if you were here at EY and you're an accountant, you wouldn't actually be able to do what you're doing, because it's all your skill bases come from your engineering background, from your technology background, from your IT training.
Yeah, so developing that does also help you in the long run as well. Okay, so that's an interesting point. And just on the diversity point, I might add that if you want to be a guest on this show, I'm open to all diverse backgrounds. I want to see some opera singers. I want to interview, anyone and everyone who's got a interesting perspective or something to share. Yeah. So on that note, I have a couple more questions to ask you. Let's take this podcast as an example. It's recently launched. The main goal of the podcast is to engage and develop the PerthYP community. Probably sooner rather than later, if I was to add a time frame. Let's try and address the realistic component, maybe the measurable component, and then in terms of being agreeable, because it's my own goal, how am I applying that? Because am I agreeing with myself in that sense, or am I not understanding?
Well, let's just unpack all that. So in terms of this podcast, I'd start from a point about how passionate are you about doing it, and how passionate is the young professional community about you doing it. Because if you're not passionate about it, the first hurdle you come to when somebody says at work, look, I really want you to work at the weekend, you can't do your podcast, you'll drop the podcast. So you need to establish your passion. And then in terms of, we're talking about the SMART, I'd be really looking for some some building of the goal around that SMART acronym. And so a few of the points that you just raised then is, first of all, is have we all agreed on this goal? Now, when we say have we all agreed on the goal, it's all the people that are influencing your life. Have they agreed on this being your goal?
I see.
So if your employer says, Harvey, we're not really happy about you doing this podcast, well, then the chances of this podcast surviving are relatively low. So we're actually looking for family, friends, employees, like all the people influencing. Are we all agreeing to allow you to do this podcast? And so, again, getting back to my own situation, when I actually wanted to break, say, world records in cycling, I had to have the agreement with my wife, because basically I was going to be gone a long time training, and she wasn't going to see me, and when she saw me I was going to be grumpy and tired and want to sleep. So if you don't have that agreement from the people who are influencing your life, or what I call the circle around you, then it's not going to happen. So that's what about agreement. But certainly with the podcast, if you're passionate about it and you've got a specific goal about what you're trying to do, it can be measured, whether you're doing it in terms of number of people that are listening to it or whatever. There's some measure to it. All the people around you, including the young professional community, are agreeing that you should do it. Is it realistic? Well, I think it is. And is there a time frame? Yes. Today. It's on.
That's a great little snapshot there in terms of how quick it can be to just flesh out your idea and flesh out your goal, and what are the gaps, I suppose, and if there are gaps, how do you address it, and you should address it, of course. So this is really an interesting concept to apply to our lives in terms of professional goals. And I think starting in the first quarter of the year, January and February have gone by pretty quick. I think it's a good time to reevaluate our goals, any New Year's resolutions, and whether they were realistic. And perhaps also, are we specific enough? If we're not specific enough, we need to get to a point. So say, for example...
And are we realistic enough?
Yeah.
Which is the problem with a lot of New Year's resolutions.
Of course. Yes, I agree.
Or agreed upon, which is another problem. We all want to hit the gym, but we find that our family doesn't allow us the time to do it, or something like that. So.
Agreed. Okay. So that's definitely some food for thought there. And I think that's pretty much all I have to comment about. But as tradition dictates for our podcast, at the end of the podcast, I give the guests the open mic to plug their company, their endeavours, and whatever else they're working on to get their name out there. And we'll certainly put your contact details and all that when this podcast goes live, so people can reach out if they have more questions. But the floor is yours.
Well, I probably don't want to take it to plug myself, but I'd like to take the opportunity to just put a challenge out to everybody. What I think that would be great to see people do over the next 3 weeks is to just take some time out and just think about, what are they trying to achieve this year? What is it that they're trying to achieve this year? And then to write it down. And interesting enough, that might sound like a very easy exercise, but my experience has been that people find it very, very hard to write down things that they don't really believe in. So once you've written it down, the chances are you do believe in it. And I think that what you'll then find yourself doing is that you'll be creating the future that you want for yourself, rather than letting the future come to you in any shape or form that it may choose.
That's awesome. That's a great sentiment. And I think something that just came to my mind was something that I did last year to achieve some of the goals that I wanted to achieve, is make sure I did something every week, that I achieved something. It took a step forward towards my goal, because I think life tends to just blur by. The Monday to Friday work cycle goes by quickly. Weekends with the family and just getting your house in order and paying bills and cooking and seeing friends and all that sort of stuff. But if you actually track it each week, maybe even write it down in it, like you said, what did I do this week? And you look back on it at the end of the year and you've got 52 entries. Just say, okay, this is where I slowed down a little bit. Oh, this week I did some really good stuff. And that will help you set your plan for the next year, I suppose, as well. How have you gone about, tracking your progress?
Well, basically, it's in my strategic plan. So even now, I've got a strategic plan that I was showing you the other night, and so I've got a way of tracking my plan, and I've got a way of modifying my plan if something happens. So I've just found this strategic planning such a powerful tool that if you do employ it, it achieves amazing things. And like even in my case, I needed to do a PhD, and I don't have the qualifications for a PhD, but by playing out a strategic plan, I was able to convince the university to enrol me in the PhD program. So look, strategic planning is incredibly powerful. The other thought I had as you were asking me that question is I'd like to set it to other challenges for people. One is during this podcast we've talked about the importance of diversity. So one of the challenges I'd like to set people is why don't they attempt to do at least, we make it one thing every week that's different to what they normally do. So that one thing can be they just come to work on a different route, or they go to see something different. Like, for example, next Wednesday there's a seminar here in this building on Taoism. How many people have ever been to a seminar on Taoism? Like, do something that's completely out of your comfort zone. Go to the opera, do something that's just not you, and I think that you learn a lot from that. And then the other thing is, and we haven't touched on it today, but you can be taught to be a creative thinker, and it's just a practice. So the challenge I'll give people is that this week, when they've got a moment, I want them to come up with 100 ways to use a brick.
Interesting.
And eventually, though, by the end of the week, hopefully they'll have 100 ways to use a brick. If they want another one for the following week, 100 ways to use a paperclip. Practice building up ideas on 100 ways to use something that you see. And within a few weeks, you become very, very good at thinking outside the box.
That's unbelievable. That's a very good challenge. So I think I might make that a running question for homework for my new guests, and we can go through the answers, I think, in the next podcast. So that's a great contribution. And Rod, this has been unbelievable. I really appreciate your time.
Well, if you use the paperclip one, you'll be able to look up on the internet, and there is 101 uses for a paperclip on the internet, so you can have a little cheat sheet.
Yeah, okay, not a bad idea.
But the brick, I don't think there is.
Fair enough. No, not at all. Okay. Well, thanks again, Rod. Really appreciate your time, and all the best. Looking forward to the new book, and anyone out there doing the MBA program, of course, probably see Rod in the future. So if you see him, of course, go and say hello. And don't forget to mention the PerthYP podcast.
Love it. Thanks, Harvey.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the PerthYP podcast. You can find out more about our upcoming events via LinkedIn at Perth Young Professionals or at our new website, perthyp.com.au. Until next time, keep connecting and keep growing.